Hello students, welcome once again in the class of water resource engineering. Today we are going to see the reservoirs. So I am Mr. S.S. Ogule, Assistant Professor, Civil Engineering Department. So what is reservoir? When a barrier is constructed across some river in the form of a dam, water gets stored on the upstream side of the barrier, forming pool of water generally called as a dam reservoir or impounding reservoir or a river reservoir. As you can see, we have so many examples that we have so many dams and water has been stored behind those walls, and we have so many reservoirs. We have famous reservoirs like Sardar Sarovar, then Nagarjun Sarovar, then we have with us Koyna Jalashay, and so many other behind the dams. So the quality of water stored in such reservoir is not much different that of natural lake. The water stored in a given reservoir during rainy season can be easily used almost throughout the year till a time of arrival of next rainy season to refill the emptying reservoir again. So the water storage reservoir may be created by constructing dam across the river, as I have told you earlier. The reservoir are also meant to absorb a part of flood water, and the excess is discharged through the spillway. So as we have recent incidences like the flood in 2019, that is because of these all these reservoirs get full and the excess water has been discharged, so that's why the flood situation has been arrived and so many things are there. So these are the reservoirs basically. Now, the what are the basic types? The impounding reservoirs, into which a river flows naturally. Impounding and storage reservoir are intended to accumulate a part of flood flow of river for use of during non-flood months, as we have the Koyna Jalashay and other dams nearer to us. Then the service or balancing reservoirs, which receiving supplies that are pumped or channeled into them artificially, and these are relatively small in volume because the storage required by them is to balance the flow for few hours or for few days at most. And same way, depending upon the purpose served, the reservoirs may be divided into the storage or conservation reservoir, flood control reservoir, and multi-purpose reservoir. The four type of reservoir is a simple storage tank constructed within a city of water supply system is called distribution reservoir. So we will see one by one what are these reservoirs. In distribution reservoir, the it is not generally the river reservoir. It is just a kind of simple water storage tank like Bund Garden in Pune. Those kind of dams are there. So we are going to we will see the types in detail. First is the storage or conservation reservoir. A city water supply, irrigation supply, or hydroelectric project uh, drawing water directly from a river or a stream may fail to satisfy the consumer demand during the extremely low flows, while during high flows it may become difficult to carry out the operation due to devastating floods. A storage or conservation reservoir can retain such excess supplies during periods of peak flows and can release them gradually during the low flows and as an when the need arises. Incidentally, in addition to conserving water for later use, the storage of floodwaters also may reduce flood damage below the reservoir. Hence, reservoir can be used controlling floods either solely or in addition to other purposes. In former case, it is known as a flood control reservoir or a single purpose flood control reservoir, and in later case it is called as a multi-purpose reservoir. Now the flood control reservoirs. The flood control reservoir is generally called flood mitigation reservoirs. Stores portion of flood flows in such a way as to minimize the flood peaks at areas to be protected downstream. To accomplish this, entire inflow entering into reservoir is discharged till the outflow reaches the safe capacity of the channel downstream. The inflow in excess of this rate is stored in the reservoir when which is then gradually released so as to recover the storage capacity for the next flood. Now, what are the types of flood control reservoirs? There are two basic types of flood mitigation reservoir, that is storage reservoir or detention basins, and the retarding basins or retarding reservoirs. The reservoirs having gates and walls installation at the spillway and at its sluice outlets is known as a storage reservoir, while other hand the reservoir with uncontrolled and ungated outlets are known as retarding basins. So what are the functioning and advantage of retarding basins? Retarding basins is usually provided with uncontrolled spillway and uncontrolled orifice type sluiceways. The automatic regulation of outflows depending upon the availability of water takes place from such reservoir. The maximum discharging capacity of such reservoir should be equal to maximum safe carrying capacity of the channel downstream. As flood occurs, the reservoir gets filled and discharged through sluiceways. As reservoir elevation increases, the outflow discharge increases. The water level goes on rising until the flood is subsided. The inflow becomes equal to or less than the outflow. After this, the water gets automatically withdrawn from the reservoir until the stored water is completely discharged. The advantage of retarding basin over the gate control detention basins are: one, the cost of gate installation is saved, and second, there are no gates, hence possibility of human error and negligence in the operation is eliminated. And third is, since such reservoir is not always filled, much of the land below the maximum reservoir level will be submerged only temporarily and occasionally and can be successfully used for agriculture, although no permanent habitation can be allowed on this land. Now, the functioning and advantage of storage reservoirs. A storage reservoir with gated spillway and gated sluiceways provide more flexibility in operation and thus gives us better control and increased usefulness of the reservoir. Storage reservoirs are therefore preferred as on large river, which require better control, while retarding basins are preferred on small rivers. In storage reservoirs, the flood crust downstream can be better controlled and regulated properly, so as not to cause their coincidence. This is the biggest advantage of such reservoir and outweigh its disadvantages of become costly and involving risk of human error in installation and operation of gates. Now, the multi-purpose reservoirs. A reservoir planned and constructed to serve not only one purpose but various purposes together is called multi-purpose reservoir. A reservoir designed for one purpose, incidentally serving other purposes, shall not called as a multi-purpose reservoir, but will be called so only if designed to serve those purposes also in addition to the main purpose. Hence, a reservoir designed to protect the downstream areas from flood and also to conserve water for water supply, irrigation, industrial needs, hydroelectric purposes, etc. shall be called multi-purpose reservoir. Bhakra Dam and Nagarjun Sagar Dam are important multipurpose projects of India. Actually, we have the Koyana Dam here, then Radhanagiri Dam is there. So, all these dams we are using for the generation as well as the irrigation and the regular water use or domestic water supply. So many uses are there for these dams. So, these are also the multi-purpose reservoirs. Now the last type is distribution reservoir. A distribution reservoir is a small storage reservoir constructed within a city water supply system. Such reservoir can be filled by pumping water at certain rates and can be used to supply water even at rates at higher than the inflow rate during the periods of maximum demands, called critical periods of demand. Such reservoirs are therefore helpful in permitting the pumps or water treatment plants to work at uniform rate, and they stored more water during the hours of no demand or less demand and supply water from their storage during the critical periods of the maximum demand. So in coming lecture, we are going to concentrate only our study to the river reservoirs, because those are mostly connected with the irrigation purposes, and the main focus of this subject is to learn the irrigation needs or the crop needs, as we have seen already in the few chapters. So in coming uh, lectures, we are going to see the capacity elevation and area elevation curve for reservoir site, then the yield of reservoir, then the few formulas, the storage zones of the or various levels of the reservoir, then catchment yield, reservoir yield, or how to calculate the capacity of the reservoir, so many things, then mass demand curve is there. So these things we are going to learn, even the sedimentation advantages, surveys regarding all the uh, reservoir planning, then when we are planning the reservoir, the at that time when how to decide the capacity, and which is depend on the height of the dam, so many things are there. So we are going to see those things one by one. So that's all for today's lecture. Thank you.